Up until a few days ago, I didn't know who Emma Grede was, and I am really excited about that for myself. Now, I work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, but I also work very much in the company culture space. So, companies that hire me don't just hire me around diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, they also hire me to help remedy some of the culture issues that happen at work, the way that employees feel at work, the way that managers are leading, the way that managers are managing, and create a culture or an environment that is conducive for work to be done in a productive and efficient way. Because whether you know it or not, when you're in a bad culture, your employees can be doing work, but is that work productive and efficient? Probably not. So people come into the workplace and they do what they need to do within that 8 hour time period. And if it's a bad culture, you're probably getting about 4 hours, five tops, if there's a project involved, from people who are in bad workplace environments. And one of the biggest groups of people who complained the most about office workplace environments where the culture was suffocating, where the culture was repressive, where the culture was microaggressive, where the culture was downright racist, were Black women. And so to have Emma Grede come online and give advice to Black women and to women generally, right? Because she's not just talking to Black women. I think we're assigning this conversation to ourselves because she presents as a Black woman. But one of the things I've often said on this platform is that when you are dealing with biracial women with white mothers, you have to engage with them as if you were engaging with another white woman until proven otherwise. And Emma Grede, to me, if I just had to close my eyes and listen to her speak, not about her accent, just close my eyes and listen to her speak, her philosophy, her train of thought, I would hear a white woman boss in corporate America. Now, I do want to say this. White women who are bosses in corporate America are not all Emma Greeds. They're not all these kind of women that don't care about your mental health, only care about the projection, don't care about how a workplace environment is impacting you, only cares about the work getting done. And if you want to get a raise, this is what you, there are white women bosses who are that. And there are some white women bosses who do care about the way that their employees are experiencing work. They do care about being supportive of their employees. And the same is true for biracial women with white mothers, right? Again, the key to that is you have to engage with biracial women with white mothers as if you're dealing with a white woman until proven otherwise. And I think based on Emma Grede, the tour that she's on, the media tour that she's on, her philosophy around work and children. I think this was the most striking thing to me about Emma Grede. Everybody's talking about her advice around work and saying that if you want to be promoted, if you want to be seen, if you want to get ahead, you need to be in the office. Remote work basically will not get you there, which is not true, right? Emma Grede and her husband, because I think from what I've learned online, her husband is the CEO of the jean brand Frame. And I love Frame jeans. I really do. I thrift them, but I do love them. And so in their workplaces, you can't get ahead, right? Because they own companies. That's the way that she is choosing to run her organization. And maybe that's the way her husband is choosing to run his organization. But that is not universally true. That simply because you work from home, there is no path to promotion and growth because you work from home. That is true for Emma Grede and her husband's companies. And so I think we should leave it there with the Emma Grede in saying that this is the way that you get ahead. This is the way you get ahead in her organization, in her companies, and the companies of her husbands. That's not true for every organization. So there's that. That struck me the most about listening to her talk was her talking about how she chooses to mother. And I found that interesting because whether women know it or not, how some women, not all women, choose to mother sometimes shows up in the way that they choose to manage and engage in the workplace. She said that she is a 3 hour max mom. And she talked about how she doesn't lie to her children and she doesn't pretend it's hard to leave her children when she has to go away for work. And it reminded me of so many white women that I have had the chance, right, to both coach and mentor. And one of the things that white women come into those sessions with me and they talk about is their relationships with their mothers and how their mothers were either cruel, dismissive, um, not caring, sometimes narcissistic, and how they had an adversarial relationship with their mother. And to some degree, they were in competition with their mothers. Because the way that she talks about her children and the way that she chooses to mother, and the way she talks about work almost being more important to her than her children are. I'm not saying that this is true. I'm saying when I listen to her speak, this is the impression that I get from her as a woman that work is more important to her because work is hers than it is to parent her children. So she says she's a 3 hour day mom, but the rest of that time she's traveling for work. She's at work. She's doing work. And I will be damned if I take advice from another mother about work being more important to her than it is to parent. Now, I'm a mom of four. I've had my children when I was young and I wasn't really doing the corporate run, right? And that was a decision that I made to have my children young, to not be in that corporate rat race, to climb the ladder and do all the things. And every time I had my children, one of the things that I did was I stayed home for a year while they were little so that I had that time to nurse my children, to breastfeed them, that I wasn't putting my young children in the care of daycare or nannies or babysitters, that I had that time to bond with them, to love them. And work for me was a function of about being able to provide for my children. But my primary function was coming home to mother them, to be their parent. And so when I listened to Emma Grede talk about being a 3-hour mom and being excited about leaving her children, any advice she gives me about work, this is me as a mother, any advice she gives me about work is taken with a grain of salt, honestly. And also, Emma Grede is married to a very wealthy man. Emma Grede is in proximity to a lot of wealth that a lot of women, especially Black women, are not in proximity to. And so, what would work for an Emma Grede and other Black women and other women like an Emma Grede won't necessarily work for your average woman. And I think we're in a time, honestly, I think a lot of us are in a time frame in our lives where we understand that the rat race for corporations and organizations whose only goal is to work us until there's nothing left. I don't think people have the same interest. And I think a lot of this advice, a lot of these conversations is about bringing people back to this idea that work must be our everything when people have decided that it isn't, because we're making billionaires rich and we're making them rich to further imprison us. And so people will do what is necessary to take care of themselves and their families. And I think we now know that what is important to us is not the work that we do, not the promotions we have, but the communities we take time to build, the relationships we take time to build, and the time we take for ourselves. And so if you're a Black woman listening to an Emma Grede, and you are the Black woman that cares about promotion, then maybe her advice is for you. But if you're a Black woman who's finally been able to go home or work from home and have peace of mind and not have to deal with racism and microaggressions and just outright aggressions in the workplace, please do not allow this woman to make you feel like you are behind and you will never get ahead. Because as someone who was recently in a psychiatric hospital, your peace of mind, your peace of mind is greater than any paycheck you could ever cash, any title you could ever hold. In that psychiatric ward was a lot of middle-aged Black women. And I often wondered, what was it? What was it that broke you, that have you here? Don't allow chasing capital be the thing that breaks you, because it will get you where I met those other women.